Welcome to the show, Sam. We have been doing a little podcast swap, so it's been fun getting to know you over the last couple of days. But tell us where you came from, or what led you to building the business that you have today.
Mm. Well, thanks for having me. It's good to chat again. And I'm excited to be here. So, where I came from, oh gosh, where do I start with this? It's like we want the long version, we want the short version. Um, yeah, I think the reason that I ultimately started a business and became an entrepreneur was because I went on my own kind of personal development journey. I had a moment in my life where the construction of what I thought was reality or what was going to be right for me or what job I was supposed to have all kind of broke. When I studied abroad in Spain, I fell in love while I was over there, and my worldview just kind of like opened up, seeing people work in different ways and have a different pace of life. And so, this entire image that I had built for myself my whole life growing up of what I thought that I had wanted, what society had kind of pushed me towards, um, I was like, maybe I don't actually want that. Maybe that was never my desire. Maybe that was the world's desire. And I was just fitting in that box. And so then I started to really question a lot of things for myself of like, do I really want to go into corporate America? Do I actually want to sit at a desk? Like, do I want to work for somebody else? Do I care about marketing and PR? I don't even know anymore. And so that was like a whole unraveling of, yeah, dismantling, I guess, societal norms that I had grown up inside, and really opening my eyes to like, maybe there's a different way to live life and maybe other things are more important. And so I think that was definitely the catalyst to me becoming an entrepreneur and building the business that I have today, because I ultimately decided in that state that I was going to decline my corporate job offers and move back to Spain for the guy that I had met on a dating app. And I chose myself in that moment. I chose what felt right to me in my heart more so than what looked right logically on paper. It was a hard choice to make because I was leaving behind a really incredible degree from an amazing university. And I was going off to live in Spain for a minimum wage job, just teaching English, as an assistant in the schools, making no money at all, with no career direction, no idea what that meant for my future. None of it really made sense at the time. But it was just a full trust kind of moment. And it was the thing that ultimately sent me on that path of discovering a lot about myself and what I wanted and my own gifts and skills and talents and what I was meant here to do. And so, yeah, that was kind of the first initial like catalyst to me building the business that I have today, was first deconstructing what I had always thought that I wanted. Because I really did envision myself ever since I was young being this hardworking kind of girl boss, climbing the corporate ladder, wearing like a beautiful designer pantsuit. I saw myself living in a big city. I knew that I wanted to be successful, whatever that was. But growing up in America, that was the only version of success I think that I saw. And so that became my dream. And then living and studying abroad in Europe and traveling and falling in love in other countries, it was like, maybe that wasn't my dream at all. So that was really illuminating. I think that was definitely the biggest shift for me of becoming an entrepreneur and building a business.
It's interesting how we can look back at our paths, and oftentimes the decisions that almost seem like a distraction or a procrastination are the ones that actually aligned us to what we're meant to do the most. Like, I spent a lot of time in my younger years traveling, not making the best financial decisions if you were looking at it through like a 40-year-old mom's point of view. Like, my mom kind of worried about me. But that's where the cracks in what was normal started to appear for me. It, that's when I started to question some of those big things. Like, is this the only way? And I'm not going to lie, I spent some years living my life and then getting a little more serious about my career and being like, should I have just started this when I was 21? Like, did I waste a bunch of time? And now that I'm 40, looking back, I am so glad that I spent 10 years sort of doing whatever I wanted. Yeah, and in some responsible ways, some irresponsible ways, but I learned about myself, and all of those things are threads that are now woven into my business now. I needed to discover that. And I don't know if I ever would, if I would have just started to grind immediately on one career. But I even look at my husband, and when I met him, that was part of what me kind of going back and forth, like, do I love that I did this? Do I wish I would have started earlier? Because he like knew he was into graphic design, knew he was starting a web company very early, and he started building pretty early. We still ended up building that together, but I was still figuring out my thing right about 30. And it was then that it took off. And I was like, I could have been about 10 years ahead. And so with your traveling, how did that lead you to your current business? What was that journey like? Was it straight? Was there a lot of confusion? Did you take a lot of different ideas and run with them? Or how did that go for you?
Yeah. So it is always interesting, like connecting the dots, looking backwards and realizing everyone's path is so unique, and like the timeline is also going to be different because, to your point, like my partner knew from a very young age that he wanted to be a lawyer, and that's what he set out to do. And like the school system in Spain is very much designed to where you have to choose the exact career that you want. Like even as young as high school, you have to start taking certain classes to set you up for what you're going to do in college. And they don't even have, general education credits at all in university. Like they're decided from the moment you're in. So then you're kind of locked in. And so he did his whole law career and became a lawyer, and now he's in his 30s, and we live, so we lived for a while together in Spain. We lived there for 6 years, but now we live in the States. And he had to start all over because you can't just be a lawyer in another country unless you want to, jump through those hoops and do the schooling and do the retesting and all the things. And so it's interesting to see him having his own awakenings of like, I don't even know if that was what I wanted. Like, I think I was just trained to want that because it was the examples that were around me. And it doesn't mean that he is like behind because he's discovering it at a different age than me, I was really young. I was 22 when I decided to move to Spain and decline my corporate job offers. And so I had those like earlier younger years to kind of like play around and figure things out. And I think there was a blessing in that I wasn't really super worried about my future because I still had that like illusion of like so much time. Do you know what I mean? And so in those years, the thing that actually allowed me to start a business was really quite simple. I've always loved to write, so that was the first thing. And so when I was traveling, I was blogging about, these different countries I was visiting and the cultures and things that I was witnessing and noticing. And so I started a blog, and then I started using my Instagram as a little bit more of like a diary per se, and like sharing some things from the heart. I did this like 30-day yoga challenge at one point, which I always reflect on because it's such a random thing that I decided to do, but it was the catalyst to me actually using Instagram in a way that was more so for other people's consumption than just for me to post photos of what I'd done with my friends on the weekend. Because up until that point, I mean, Instagram has changed so much, right, in the past 10 years. But at that point, it was really just like, posting one cute picture. Um, and this challenge was like you had to do yoga every single day for 30 days and share from the heart, something from the heart that like came up for you in your practice or something that you were pondering on or thinking about. And so I started writing these like longer posts on Instagram. They turned into kind of like these diary entries I was sharing from the heart. And that really like helped me start to flex the muscle of like, oh, social media is a place where I can actually share ideas. And, people were responding and reading. And so then I kind of did that more on my blog, and I was going through my own kind of evolution into wellness and mindset. And I was learning so much about like intrinsic motivation and subconscious reprogramming. And I just wanted to share everything that I was learning with whoever would listen or read. So I was writing a blog. I started an email newsletter called Monday Motivation, and I would send it out every Monday. And I was posting more on Instagram. And I was doing all of that for a little while. And then I got this job with an influencer who was looking for someone to help them run their retreats and kind of do a little bit of like essentially like virtual assistant work. But through that job, I was able to travel to places like Bali and Greece and help run these like wellness and meditation retreats. And that awakened something within me as well of like, wow, people actually have jobs. They're building careers around these things that they care about. Like you don't have to just sit at a cubicle. Like how cool that this is someone's job is to like help other people better their lives in some way or become healthier or become more mentally well. And so that was a big kind of catalyst for me as well. And then someone I met on one of those retreats was like, I'm going to do this certification for life purpose coaching. And I was like, that sounds interesting. So I ended up getting certified in, a form of coaching. And then I did my yoga teacher training certification. And then I was certified in past life regression therapy. And then there was all these different things that just kind of started to come along and form. And eventually what I was doing for free, I realized I could actually help clients. And so I served my first 7 clients. I worked with them one-on-one for 3 months. And I was also working full-time in a school. And then I took on these 7 clients and they had calls with me every single week for 12 weeks. And at the end of it, I was like exhausted. Um, but I was like, this is what I want to do forever. I just want to help people. I just want to talk to people. I just want to lift other people up. I want them to remember their power. I want them to know that they can create a life beyond their wildest dreams. I want them to know that they have the ability to change their mind about how they perceive themselves in the world. And they have actually infinite potential if they're willing to access it and deconstruct some of the ideas that the world has impressed upon them. And so that was the inception of like the coaching business, I guess you could say. And over the years, it's evolved so much. And now I really primarily work with women who are building personal brands and helping them elevate their marketing and their messaging, because that's one of my kind of more natural talents. Yes, I went to school and studied marketing, but I do think that there's a part of, the more you do the work, the more that you kind of find and realize like, this is my zone of genius. This is my, my skill that I'm really good at. And so, yeah, that's kind of the work that I do now. So it's changed a lot over the years.
I know for a lot of people, they see people that are or already have these successful businesses and they're inspired to start it, similar to you, where it's like, wait, I could build a life around this. But they struggle with that almost messy middle where it's like, okay, well, how am I going to bring in this client if I can't promise like, hey, I'm already making 6 figures doing this, so can you? You're like, I'm actually just trying to get started. Trust me, I'm going to guide you, even though I'm still actually sort of learning to trust myself. What was that messy middle like for you, where you were growing, where you didn't necessarily have all of the evidence to show that you were wildly successful, but you were still able to bring people in?
Mm. Yeah, I think that's a really good question. And it is important to like not try to sell something that you don't actually feel embodied in, right? And so when I first started out, I was never telling people like, I'm going to help you make more money or I'm going to help you build a 6-figure business. But I was just wanting to help people improve their lives and the quality of their relationships, because that is what the work that I was doing behind the scenes in my life and what I knew I actually could help people with. So that's the first thing. Cause I do think, when I first started out, I didn't even know that coaching was a thing. I didn't know that it was a like a career or like path or like an industry or whatever. Like I said, one of the girls I met on the retreat was like, I'm going to do this certification. I was like, sounds interesting. I had no clue. And so I do think that like my own like naiveness going into it ultimately helped me, because I didn't feel this pressure of like, I've got to stack up to all these other people that have these much bigger coaching businesses and have been in the industry longer. Like, I wasn't trying to be anyone else. I was just trying to share my message and what I had been through and what I felt like I was the living embodiment of, because what I had learned and transformed in my own life. And so I think that's the first thing that's so important, is for you to remember that like you don't have to be the Oprah. Like, you don't have to have it all figured out. You don't have to have the millions of dollars in order for something that you've been through, a pain, a trauma, a challenge, something that you've transmuted in your life, something that you've figured out how to move through more quickly or with less pain. Like, there's people that want to learn that stuff. It's, when it comes to health or mindset, or there's so many different areas where it's like, you don't have to be the pinnacle. You don't have to be at the top of the mountain in order to be able to help anybody. And there's a lot of people actually that will find your approach or the way that you talk about things to be more inviting, more accessible, more relatable, because it's a stepping stone to where they're wanting to go, not looking at you as like some god or some guru who's like so far removed from anything that they're experiencing in their life. And so I do think that's part of the process, is like remembering, Because some people will count themselves out of like, well, why should I talk about this? Who am I to teach this? Who wants to hear this message from me when they could hear it from these people who have been in business for 10, 20 years, or, they've amassed millions of dollars or millions of followers. And the reality is like, we always need more doors to be opened. And you get to be the door that the way you speak about something or your lived experience is going to be the thing that actually connects with someone so much more than just hearing an Oprah or someone else speaking on a stage about something that feels inspiring, but like feels so far away from what you can actually access. And I also think people who have been in business for a really long time often it is harder to access them, right? They start to move their knowledge into things that are more widely accessible so they can reach the masses, but it becomes books, it becomes, things that are less close proximity. Like you can't actually be in the room with the mentor when they get to a certain level. But people need that. People need like to actually have a human conversation with someone. And so that's what people are doing when they are deciding to move their mission forward and to count their voice in and decide that it matters is they're opening up that door for somebody else who actually needs that space, needs that perspective, and needs that one-on-one person to person mentorship to be able to receive it. So be the embodiment of what you're going to talk about for sure. Don't make any false promises. Don't pretend to be something that you're not. And definitely don't try to sell something that you know nothing about. um, but also, there's a lot of women, especially, that feel like they're not far enough along to be able to help anyone. And I also don't think that that's true.
Yeah, I that's a lot of the work I end up talking with people about when they're just on that brink and they just can't get themselves to take the leap. It's like so often, though, we are normalizing the value that we hold because we live with it every day. But almost all of us have had a conversation with someone where someone's like, oh my gosh, no one's ever explained it to me that way. And we're giving people aha moments more often than we allow ourselves to see in our lives. And I even think about that because I just go so deep in different areas. There's different topics where I'm like, do people even want to learn about that? And it's like, oh yeah, just because I've been in it for 15 years doesn't mean it's not new information
Or
for others.
you start thinking that everybody already knows this stuff
Yeah.
because you're in your own echo chamber of surrounding yourself with people who do talk about that, who do read those books, who do practice that stuff, who are, conversing about those ideas. And so you think, oh, everybody knows this, but there's so many people that don't.
Is there anything that you taught at one point that has definitely evolved in the way that you teach it because your understanding of it has deepened?
That's a really good question. I think when it comes to personal brand, I would say, and this is probably also because the social climate has evolved, like it keeps changing so rapidly when it comes to social media and just the way that, we're interacting and consuming and what's quote unquote working. But I think my initial perception of personal brand was really just about like sharing anything and everything and being yourself and being this open book and almost kind of like being the influencer type who's just like letting people into their life in a sense. And while that can be part of like building a personal brand, I do think that my perception has evolved in the sense that I see so much more value in people being a bit more narrow with what they choose to talk about and not necessarily like niching down, because I do think that for a lot of people, the idea of niching down feels super limiting and restricting to them. And I also am not a person who feels like I ever really niched that well. Do you know what I mean? I've talked about a million things. I don't know if I've ever had like a true niche, but I see so much more value in really being intentional and strategic with the things that you talk about so that you can become known for something. And I like to call them mastery markers. I think they're like content pillars, hot or older sister, but it's really just understanding, what do I really want to be known for? When someone thinks about bringing me on a podcast or they're having an event and they need speakers and they want someone to speak on X topic, like will my name come to mind of, oh, well, she's the girl that always talks about this, and what are they going to think of me as, and what are the things that people are going to put me next to in their mind, and how am I going to be associated? Like that stuff doesn't just happen by accident. It gets curated by you creating this dialogue that happens over and over and building the familiarity within your content and your audience of like, she's the, small blonde girl that always, talks in her car about whatever, whatever, whatever. Like there is a way to intentionally construct what you want to be known for. And I think what I've evolved to understand is more of the value of being a bit more narrow in those things than just being this broad, like I'm just going to show you everything and talk about everything and be everything. And then hopefully you'll like me enough to want to buy something from me.
I think you're right. And that understanding for a lot of people has also evolved with the times, at least with social media. Like if you go to an internet marketing conference back in 2009, yeah, they were still talking all about niching down, but that was more in the lines of like creating a niche SEO friendly website. But when Instagram came around and YouTube, some of the biggest names back then were they just went hard right away. So they were like, I'm actually constantly blown away by the success of family vloggers just
Yeah.
because I could not even imagine consuming 1 minute of that. Like, I do not understand at all how that is interesting to somebody, but they're just like, we're just doing our daily vlog every day. And here's our kids. And I was like, first of all, nightmare for your children. Second of all, like nightmare for me. Third of all, who is watching this? But it works for people. People like that stuff or they liked it. And I think now there's just so much and so many people trying to do that. It's like, okay, why am I going to watch you? More viewers and consumers are asking themselves that question and not even whether they realize it or not getting sucked into, oh, well, I'm really interested in this topic. So now I'm being gravitated towards this. So I can definitely see how that has evolved over time. But I'm also wondering like, so here's something that I know you teach on and I've taught on, but my relationship to it has definitely evolved over the years. So I'm curious to see what your perception is on just the idea of manifestation. How did you start with manifestation? And how has your understanding of it evolved over time?
Mm. Yeah, I think my manifestation was one of the initial kind of concepts. I guess we can call it law of attraction. That was my first initial introduction to something, connected to the idea of manifestation. And that was one of my first introductions into truly feeling and knowing that we are spiritually connected to this universe in a deeper way than just what we can see in the 3D. And that was a really important experience for me to have because even though I grew up as a Christian by default, I didn't really feel super convicted in any belief of anything really in particular. I was like, oh, I think like God is like probably maybe real, right? Like I was just, kind of floating, right? I was a floater spiritually. And so manifestation was a really important concept to come into my life because it was the first thing as an adult that allowed me to actually see and feel the true connection that we have energetically with the world that we are living in. Like I remember receiving signs for the first time and being like, "Oh my god, like something is out there." Like something is out there, like God, the universe, I don't know, but like I'm talking and they're talking back and like what the heck is happening? So I think that was like it was really illuminating for me. It was life-changing. It changed everything because I realized like the way that I think and feel and act and believe is going to be directly reflected in my reality. If I believe that I am powerful, if I believe that I am safe, if I tell myself that I am happy, that I have good fortune, that I am blessed, like I start to see those things. And I understood it from a scientific perspective as well, just in terms of like, the reticular activating system and making sure that I'm cleaning that filter so that I'm choosing what I want to tell my brain that I want to see more of because I could see more of anything, right? But I'm going to program that. And just that realization was like, wow, I felt so powerful in that. And in doing so, I did attract so many amazing opportunities and experiences and abundance and people into my life. And yeah, I think that I do think that the concept of manifestation is real. I think it's positive. I think it's helpful. Um, I think maybe when I was younger, I associated it as being only available to people of like new age spirituality that are like using crystals and tarot cards and things like that. But now I really look at manifestation as simply like the idea that we can take a thought and turn it into things. And so, regardless of the spiritual beliefs underneath it, I still think that that law of the universe applies, and that I very much am co creating my reality based on the way that I decide to live my life and what's going on in my heart and my mind on a regular basis.
Yeah, I love the concept of manifestation, by the way, but my understanding of it has definitely evolved from, the intro with maybe the book The Secret or something like that. And I think a lot of people get stuck in that sort of beginning part where it's just about thoughts, just about what you're thinking about. The way my understanding has evolved over time is that the action part is even more important than the thought part, but the thought part is the foundation, because your thoughts will even get in the way of you taking your own action. And so that's what I feel like I'm constantly explaining to people that have given up or think that it's too woo woo or some BS concept. And I'm like, okay, well, how far did you get? Did you have like 12 meditations where you're like visualizing yourself with a stack of money? What is that for? How do you have any idea of what your next step is? Have you moved toward it at all? like that, the thought is always the foundation, because if I don't think that something's ever going to work out for me, I'm not going to take that first step. You still have to take the first step, and there you might find your next sign, or the next step will reveal itself. But that is the process of it. It's you going hard on all of the things that you're thinking about, and also cleaning up your thought processes, noticing when you're getting in your own way, challenging those thoughts, rewriting them consciously, taking another step, a little bit nervous, to build evidence. And it's this whole ecosystem of what it takes to turn that thought into a thing. And then, yes, sometimes it even meets you magically, where an opportunity appears that you didn't feel like you put yourself out there for. But often you're still even ignoring all of the ways that you put yourself out there for that opportunity
Yeah.
to show up. It's not just, okay, well, I'm going to do nothing and sit here and ruminate on an idea, and oh, nothing happened. So this,
I mean,
this doesn't
I
work.
think I think that people should be too intelligent to even fall for I never read or heard about a concept of manifestation that was like just sit there and think and then things will happen. Do you know what I mean? Like I think we should all give ourselves credit for being intelligent enough to realize that that's definitely not the full picture of what people are talking about. Like you can't spell attraction without action.
Yes.
That's it. It's like you
You'd
do
be
have to do
surprised though.
something.
So I have this toxic trait that serves me sometimes and sometimes does not, where it's not really a toxic trait, but when I'm building something, I like to do a lot of research to see, okay, well, what are the things people believe about this, whether positive or negative, so that I can, understand how to teach it with more depth. And so I'll go on Reddit threads, and Reddit is
Oh God.
often the worst place to go. Read about manifestation on Reddit threads, and you will
No.
realize how many hundreds of thousands of people stop where it is. And so we're lucky often, but that's how I try to take myself out of the echo chamber. Yes, the people that come to me, they're already halfway there, like they're not complete cynics, and then they're like, well, let me reach out to this girl. They're going to reach out to somebody else, if they are. But I like to see what everyone believes, because I also know that a lot of the people that are at the beginning stages of learning probably have a lot of people in their lives that are naysayers, just like I did,
Mhm.
until I built my comforting circle of people that shared a lot of beliefs that I could bounce things off of. But when you're starting, and those are the people I have to teach. And so I need to know like what their mom might be saying, what their stepbrother might be saying to them, so that we can kind of get around it. But yeah, I wish I believed people were as smart as you do.
Well, it makes a lot of sense. Like
Yeah.
when you think about what you just said, it makes a ton of sense. What you think most often influences, like what you think on a repetitive basis influences your beliefs. They start,
Yeah.
repetitive thoughts become a belief system, and your belief systems are the things that influence the way that you show up or don't show up in the world, the actions that you take or that you don't take. And so the actions that you take are going to dictate the results that you get in life, and based on the results that you're getting, you are going to inform and reinform the identity of who you believe yourself to be, which is then going to reinforce the thoughts that you're having on a regular basis. And so it's kind of this circular thing that happens where it's like the thoughts that you are thinking most often are creating beliefs. The beliefs that you are believing on a conscious or unconscious level are informing the action that you're taking. The action is going to determine the results that you get. The results that you get is going to inform the identity of who you believe yourself to be, what you think you're capable of. And that again goes back to reinform the thoughts. And so, of course, if we're wanting to change what we're experiencing in our lives, action is a part of the equation. But I think you're right. Like it starts at the thought, but it doesn't stop at the thought, of course.
Yes. Yes. We're constantly seeking to build evidence for the beliefs that we're trying to reinforce. And so sometimes I go at that just the completely backwards way where I'm like, I can feel myself really doubting this. This is the thing. Like, I can't solidify this. What can I do right now to go
Against it.
hard on this? Yeah. Like how do I go out and actually immerse myself in the real world to build evidence for this? And sometimes it's action on my own end, but sometimes I'm like, okay, let me surround myself with people who I know hold this belief, like who is already living this. And so that's one of my first steps. Usually when I'm trying to move into a new area, I, and I had to do this even when I was becoming an entrepreneur, I realized everybody around me had a very typical understanding of what life should be. When I first told my mom I was starting a travel blog, my stepdad, that was the first business idea I had. It was like, well, you got to get a real job though. People don't make money off that. Like he couldn't believe people even made money off of that. So then I start pulling up stuff and he's like, nah, like walks away. And I'm like, okay, well, I need to get in the rooms with people that are doing this. So we joined a co-working space where people were starting their own thing. I found Facebook groups. I found this random site called Travel Massive that brought together travel influencers. And I just started going and having more conversations with them. And so that was action. It wasn't necessarily me building my own quite yet, but I was putting myself in situations where suddenly I saw what was possible because other
Mm-hmm.
people were doing it. So then the
Mm-hmm.
possibility for myself became even more tangible.
Yeah, I heard something once about like the retina being the first point of processing for the subconscious mind. And so it's like just to affirm the idea that like it is so strong when we can see something to believe it. Like we want to talk about faith in the sense of like believe it even before you can see it. And there's value in being able to do that for certain things in life as well, undoubtedly. But like this idea that if you can see something as reality, as truth, as possible because it already exists, it becomes so much easier for you to believe that it's available. And so I call people like that expanders because they are the people that expand your consciousness to almost automatically believe, oh my gosh, people are like this, people talk like this, people are achieving this, people make money like this. These things are normal. They are normalizing something for you that you thought was maybe like outlandish or challenging or hard or difficult. And by putting yourself in those rooms and in those conversations, you are automatically seeing to believe that it's possible, which makes it so much easier for you to now actually change your thoughts. Whereas if you were just sitting in your basement alone, with no one to look at as an example, being like, just believe that I can be a millionaire. It might be really hard. It might be really hard. But you get in a room, you have conversations, you're like, oh my God, this normal ass person that didn't even graduate high school, like they are making what? How much? 20 million doing what? And you're like, okay, okay. And it starts to break down those barriers of what you thought was possible.
Yeah. Yeah. When was the last time, the most recent time, that you felt yourself coming up against a belief that you had to consciously work through or an upper limit or something like
That's a good question. I think one that I have come up against many times in the recent years is the idea that motherhood is going to slow me down. like that's one that I have to consistently work through because I'm at that stage of life where I'm about to get married. I want to have a family someday. I hope that it's possible for me. That's my dream, to be able to have children. But I think once you start building a business and you look around at the pace that you move at and the hours that you work, and I'm like, where does an infant fit in here? I don't know how it does. And so that creates a challenge in my brain of like, okay, well then a lot of things are going to have to change. And what is that going to look like? And is it going to change for better? Is it going to change for worse? Am I capable of this? Is it going to have a detrimental impact on our family's revenue, on my business? Does that matter? Do I care more about family than about, being quote unquote more successful, or, making more money year over year? So I think that is probably the theme of my life at this point, where I come up against a lot of beliefs or ideas that I have to challenge. And I have to challenge them because I don't want to accept that, you know that my dream of being a mom means that I'm going to lose my other dream of like having this business and creating this impact. And so what I've been doing is talking to lots of moms who are also entrepreneurs, and like not asking them for, fake, fairy tale stories of like everything was actually perfect and so easy and it was never hard. But even just, talking to them about their experiences of moving through pregnancy and postpartum and the journey of like having kids has been helpful for me, like having people like that as expanders to see that even though there will be challenges, like it is possible. So yeah.
Yes, something near and dear to my heart. Something unexpected happened when we had kids. Both of our income increased kind of exponentially the first year that we had a kid. And then it happened again the second time we had a kid. And so now this is the first time where I am a lot more laid back about it, because I had those same thoughts. Like, what does it even look like? I don't know what it looks like to have a kid. I have no idea how I'm going to do this. And then I had the same thoughts. Like, I have no idea what it looks like to have two kids. Now I'm like, I can kind of picture three. Like, I already know what multiple kids is like. So it doesn't feel like that big of a jump, even though everyone says going from 2 to 3 is the hardest. But I will always challenge that and say, I am sorry. Nothing will ever be harder than going from 0 to 1 at age 35 when I had like 17 adult years only focusing on myself. That was
Yeah.
difficult. And so for me, I'm always thrown back during the first trimester because I get super nauseous and super tired. And I end up having to cancel a lot of things during that period. And then it worries me. But then I get this surge and I end up having so much productivity in trimester 2 and 3. And so it ends up making up for all the lost time. So if you do have kids, plan for that first 3 months to be like only self-care as much as possible. Like give yourself that. And then of course, like around the birth of the baby time, but things just for us, our story, and for actually a lot of people I've talked to, it just worked out because I realized how much time was wasted on things that weren't important. And now my time is so critical that I'm like,
Yeah.
nope, I can't work during these times. So I'm going to get everything done in this 45 minutes and this 3 hour block and like whatever it is. And
Hmm.
I just ended up being much more productive and realized how, how much lazier I was with my time without realizing it beforehand.
Yeah, I've heard that from a lot of moms, and that actually brings me a lot of peace because I am the type of person, like growing up, I was so busy in school. I was a full-time competitive dancer. I was on the cheerleading team. I, got good grades in school. I was very busy all the time. And so I remember that like I would, be eating meals in the car from one practice to the next, and I was optimizing every minute. Not that that was like good for my nervous system as a teenager. But like I would have a 30-minute study hall and I would be like, no one talk to me. I have to get all this homework done because I won't be done with my other stuff tonight until 10 p.m. And I just remember like I do thrive on having more structure. Like it forces you to really be like prioritize. And I realize give me white space and you will discover the like laziest, most a disorganized, distracted version of me. That's what I'm like, oh, this week is so open. It's beautiful. I'm going to get so much done. No, I get nothing done. Nothing. I need everything scheduled out. I need time blocks. And so that gives me hope because I'm like, I think I definitely buy into the idea that people are saying you become so much more effective with the limited time that you do have. And I've also heard from a lot of moms on, the side of their husbands or their partners that like something biologically they feel happens in the man when he realizes that he's going to become a father that almost like ignites this deeper sense of purpose and providership. And so sometimes they will also experience shifts in their career or their businesses or their income because it's like a hunger, like a primal sort of like hunger is like awakened inside of them to be like, wow, this is really it. Like people, my family needs me. So I'm like, that sounds nice.
It is nice. That's exactly what happened with my husband, and it is attractive, I will tell you. Like, I was like, I didn't even know there was room for for me to move towards this, but this is lovely. And I'll also say that for me, at least, because I was an only child, I just sort of lived for me a lot. Doesn't mean I wasn't kind or generous or whatever, but I was building my life based on me only. And um, there were a lot of things that I thought were going to be important that weren't. And so they naturally fell away. It just like clarified, yeah, I don't want to do this part. Was I doing that out of obligation or because I thought it would be cool? I don't know. So that happened too, freed up some time. And then also, I just feel like I became a much better person. Like no amount of nervous system training will ever prepare you for being a mom. It helped. Yeah, it gave me some patience, but it's also like sometimes living inside of nails on a chalkboard. And so you just recalibrate. I'm never annoyed if somebody's kid is crying on a plane anymore. Whereas I would have been like, oh man, like really, I'm seated next to this person. Not annoyed. I only feel compassion. I only want to help. It does not bother me. And so all of these things where I thought, am I even going to like being a mom? I'll be honest. I didn't know if I liked kids that much. I wasn't drawn to children. I wasn't, and now I am. It's like, I didn't even realize I was sort of half ignoring like half the population of people under 18. And now I just have this deeper appreciation for them. I have a deeper appreciation for parents. I am more patient and calm. I can, and then a hidden thing that I wasn't expecting is I'm actually so much better at my own inner work because so much of that inner work is inner child work. And
Hmm.
now I know exactly how to speak to a child.
Yeah, so true. Well, I've also heard a lot of people talk about like their own inner child healing came up for them a lot when they had kids because it's like you see the mirror right in front of you of like, wow, realizing things about your own childhood that you did or didn't receive. And it just feels more open and more raw when you have your own kids and you realize the immense amount of like love that you have for them. And then if there was any sort of yeah, like lack of that between you and your parents. You're like, how could they not do these things for me? Or how could they not, talk kindly to me? Or how could they ever yell at me or spank me or like whatever? And so I've just heard a lot of people talk about how, yeah, that's another hidden kind of blessing, I guess, of you having your own kids is like you get that invitation to relook at like the inner child healing and parenting not only your brand new child, but also reparenting yourself.
Yes, I will drop the little note of, for me, I think I could have done that part with a little more grace. Looking back, for about the first 3 years of having kids, my relationship with my mom became really rough. And I think at the time, all I could see was like, why are you being so controlling? This is my family. I want to make decisions. And there was definitely hints of that. But there was also hints of what I couldn't see was that some of those subconscious reprocessing things where I then started looking at things she did and made it wrong
Hmm.
or that it could have been better. And I didn't say that to her. But I think because I held that belief, I couldn't necessarily hide that completely. And it definitely shifted ways that we interacted with each other in a way. And so when I could see that and shed light on it, I started doing my own healing and things naturally kind of we're in a really great place now, and I love that she helps with my kids, and it's really nice. But yeah, sometimes when things get stirred up, I didn't realize how that was kind of seeping out into my external when I thought that it wasn't. So that's kind of thing. But I'm curious for you because I know this has come up with a lot of people for me lately where they're trying to make that decision and they don't really know if they want to. And I know that one of the things you help women do is build clarity around their goals, and lifestyle is part of that. So what are some of your tips for getting really clear on, is this something that I actually want? Is this something I've been told to want, or I'm just feeling pressure because people around me are doing it?
Hmm. Yeah, I think like my whole life, I knew with such certainty that I wanted to be a mom. Only did I ever start to like question that when I moved into my like later 20s. I was an entrepreneur at that point. I was really busy building a business, making a lot of money. And I felt like, I don't know, like, would kids ruin this? Or like, is it the greatest thing to happen, or is it gonna be like kind of annoying? And then what the more you like become an adult, the more I realized how much I still need my parents. I still depend on them very much so. Like when we moved when we moved into this our condo here in Florida, we were moving from Spain, but we had lived with them for a little while while we were house hunting, and they're based in North Carolina. And so we drove down in our small car. It's like a 11, 12-hour drive from North Carolina to South Florida here. But we had some other belongings and our giant, 80-pound dog that wasn't going to fit in our car. So my parents came down a couple of days later. They drove the rest of our belongings and our dog, and then they stayed here with us for 4 days. There was no furniture. We were sitting on buckets, eating Chipotle bowls for lunch and just literally doing physical labor all day long, deep cleaning, painting all the walls, going to sleep in a hotel room, waking up the next morning at 8 a.m., back to work. We were working like dogs for like 4 days straight to get everything kind of set up in the house so we could really start to move furniture in. And then at the end of those 4 days, they got in their car and they drove another 12 hours back home. And I just remember thinking, wow, like that is parenthood. I'm at that point, I was in my late 20s, I was 28. I'm like, and that sounds miserable. What my parents just did for me. Drove 12 hours with my dog in the back, my giant dog in the back, slobbering over their car, then slave labor to, clean my house and paint it, and then drive another 12 hours back home. I'm like, that is the selflessness of a parent who really loves you and wants the best for you. And I was like, I don't know if I'm prepared. I don't know if I'm prepared because this sounds awful. Like, I love my parents for how many sacrifices they made for me. But I think the older I got, the more, when you're younger, you don't see it. The older you get, you start to see everything that they did for you, the way that they created magical moments, everything that they sacrificed, all of the late nights. My dad was a really involved dad. He was the coach of all of my brother's sports teams. He would stay up late to write the plans and the plays, and he was at all the practices and the games. And my parents came to every dance recital, everything that we ever had. And I just was like, wow, like it's a lot to be the kind of parent that I want to be. It's going to be a lot. And so that was when I started to maybe have the questions in my head of, am I actually capable? Do I want this? Is it going to enrich my life? Is it going to make it better? But the thing that helped me decide is the same thing that helped me decide when I was going to decline my corporate job offers and move to Spain for the guy that I met on the dating app, right? It's like this uncertain future of, is this my destiny, or is this the dumbest thing I've ever done? Right. And really, it was like trusting my own inner knowing. It was trusting the feeling in my body and understanding that the idea of not doing this thing and potentially looking back when the time had passed and it was no longer available to me, and feeling the crushing regret of, I wish I had tried, I wish I had experienced that, was worse than the idea of actually just ripping the band-aid off and going for it. And that's how I knew I wanted to move to Spain. I knew that the regret of not trying would kill me more than anything else. And so I just feel so certain that whatever challenges come with being a mom will be so worth the lived experience of having that. And I'm a big fan of like, you only live once. I mean, I guess in this lifetime, unless you are thinking about your next lives that you might come back for, but I don't know, this could be my last life. Do you know what I mean? Like,
I'm hoping it will be.
right? I'm like, I think I'm there. I think I'm there. But it's part of like living life's fullest experience, like how cool. I thought about this when my brother had his kids. He had a little boy and then he had a little girl. And I was like, you are God's favorite because you are having the full spectrum of the human experience. You get to have a daughter and a son. And I don't know, I think I'm just that kind of person. Like I want to experience everything that life is here to offer me, and I have that inner knowing of like I'm meant to be a mother even if it will be challenging.
Yes, I love that. And I will say, I think the process of it makes you the kind of person that's selfless, that has so much love. And we all know, we've all learned that giving is proven to be the most joy that you can feel if you learn how to give from your heart.
Service.
And so it's so interesting how often we resist that, or we think that it's going to be awful. And it's just funny because I spent a lot of time in that. Like I spent a lot of time thinking it would be awful to have kids. I'm like, I just don't get it. Then I couldn't do this. Then I couldn't do that. And it was really coming up where I started to feel like, I've kind of done everything. Like I feel like I've done a lot of the things. Like, yes, there's still stuff to do, but I've traveled and I've built a business and I've been living for myself. And I just feel like now I'm like seeking ways to spend more money. Like I need to go to a coffee shop, or I need to go meet, like, there's got to be more. And so I feel like I tapped out my like single responsibility free life, and then the world shut down. And so it became really clear for me. I still wonder, if the world didn't shut down, would we have made that decision? Because I
Yeah.
said 5 years at 30, and then it was approaching 35, and I was like, I don't know if I'm ready. And then we're on our like 11th puzzle. We ran out of them, and we're like, maybe we should just try for kids. Like no one's doing anything. And that's really how it happened. But it also encouraged us to move to a mountain town, and it encouraged all these things that I was nervous about. I could feel myself wanting, but I could talk myself out of.
Hmm.
And who I am today is nothing like who I was that first year of having a kid. But it's funny because pregnancy was difficult for me. And so by the time the infant came, I was like, okay, this isn't so bad, because at least I don't feel that way anymore.
You were like, at least I'm not wanting to vomit every 5
I
minutes.
know. Then I'm like, uh, definitely sleepless, but then that kind of passes. And I'm like, okay, but then there's another phase, and each phase kind of prepares you for the next one. And so now, like, my oldest is definitely a spirited child, definitely strong willed. And I was just wondering, like, oh my gosh, should we even have another one? But then my second one was like, okay, well, this is a lot more chill. I can handle this. And then my oldest passed the phase like just about like 3 or 4 months ago, and he's just been a whole new kid. I'm like, okay, light at the end of the tunnel. This is going to be wonderful. And now I'm excited for, I don't even know if I've officially announced that I'm pregnant again. Not getting the full spectrum, but I'm getting the full spectrum of 3 boys. So we'll see how that turns out. But I'm really excited
You're
about it.
like, we're
Just
in the clear. Let's add a third.
I know. Well, I was like, well, let's try for a girl one more time. Guess I'm just meant to have boys. We're stopping here. But watching their little, like my two that I have now, their little relationship with each other, that alone, I could just sit there and watch them talk to each other. It is
Yeah.
this deep joy. I'm like, I created you guys. Like, what are you going to say next? Did you just make a joke? You're two. This is wild. It is so fulfilling. So I'm glad that you brought that up and we could kind of dive into it, because like I said, people have been bringing that up to me quite a bit lately.
Yeah.
But I'm curious though, because I think a lot of the theme of what we talked about has been like growing into roles and making choices and then trusting that we're going to become that. What are you learning right now that you're not great at yet?
Oh, what am I learning right now that I'm not great at yet? Maybe like my like discipline with um like physical exercise.
Tell us about that.
Uh, I'm on like a health journey. Um, I'm a healthy individual, but I'm like, I want to optimize. And also, as you know, I'm like in this stage where I'm like, I'm gonna be a mom soon. Like I want to prepare for pregnancy. I gotta regulate my hormones and like do all these things. Um, yeah, I ask people sometimes because I think it's so interesting and fascinating the responses. I'll ask people like, do you think that you're better at tolerating physical pain or emotional pain? And when I do this poll on my Instagram, it's always so fascinating to me because I think most people, the majority is always physical pain. And I'm like, what? I'm like, physical pain is actually the most agonizing thing to me in the world. I'm such a little like princess brat with like physical pain. I do not want to experience it. But then when it comes to business or like the mental discipline or even like overcoming emotional challenges in life with, relationships or understanding things, I'm like, keep going. Like it's worth it. Like, but like with the physical pain, I'm like, no. So I guess something that I've been learning that I'm not that good at yet is how to be really disciplined in, um, yeah, like physical exercise for the benefit of my health. And it's not that I'm a person that's never exercised. I have. I will give myself every permission slip to be like, oh, it's okay. Like we'll go later or like we'll go tomorrow or we'll only go twice a week. Like, or, so I'm learning more about how to be more committed to my word when it comes to how I want to show up for physical exercise.
Mm. What have you learned so far? What has been working for you?
I've learned that I work best with a buddy system. If I don't have a buddy, I make a lot of excuses. But when I have I got 5 hours of sleep last night, and because my friend and I have a standing appointment every Monday to be at the gym at 8 a.m., my ass was up. I was ready to go. I was there. I was there. So yeah, I have a lot more like external motivation than internal just by myself. But like you can work with that when you know that you're like, all right, let me book the class. Let me work out with a friend. Like you figured out. I hired a trainer. I worked out with a personal trainer for a year, and that was really good for me to get comfortable in the gym with weightlifting and things. Like I just need a body double.
I love that. I will tell you though, there has been like my understanding of things have kind of shattered. One of my favorite people online, I've had her on the podcast before. Her name's Kaylee, but she goes by nutrition.elements and she's a TCM doctor. But what I love about her is she starts conversations and then her stories will just be people's responses that she's screenshotting. So it almost feels like reading a
Mm.
forum and you don't just get one person's opinion, you get all of this feedback and she'll share both sides. Like this worked for me, this didn't. One of the things that was mind blowing to me, I thought my birth was going to be so easy because I have been an avid yogi since I was like 21. And everyone says that's great, the flexibility, all of this stuff. My first birth took 5 days. And my second one, I was not nearly as active. I did yoga about once a week, but not as hard. And I did a lot of walking because I already had a baby. And so I was just walking with a stroller. That birth only took 4 hours. You could argue first versus second birth. That's a thing. But what I found out through these conversations, literally hundreds of screenshots, was almost every avid yogi, every CrossFit person, everyone who worked out hard had really difficult births. And those who just didn't, who just walked or belly dancing, which was actually specifically created for giving birth, had really easy births. So now that's what I'm taking this time. And so maybe something to look forward to when you get pregnant. You can actually dial back with no guilt and
Yeah.
just do a lot of walking.
Well, I feel like it has to do with definitely your like when you do strenuous like hard workouts a lot, don't they say that it's like you can have an overactive pelvic floor. So you can
Yes.
almost have more tightness than what you're working out hard, so you think that that's good, but you can have more tightness in the area that is not really optimal when you're trying to,
Yep.
soften and expand and open. And so probably that makes sense to me that, if you are also, exercise is a form of stress on the body. And so if you are walking or doing things that feel very, non strenuous to you, but that are still providing movement, it makes sense to me that you would be in a more open, relaxed state rather than a tensed kind of state.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. And I even now, there's certain times where I'm like, do I feel a little bit nauseous right now? And I'm like, wait, am I just naturally tightening my core because I'm a woman? I've been trained to do this since I was like 12. And I will realize that and I'll just like let it go. And I was like, oh, that feels so much better. I've been doing that to myself. So it's all these
Hmm.
little things of kind of unraveling. But the last question I want to ask is, if you were to leave listeners with one thing, whether it's something to think about or something to do, something that's really moved the needle, whether it is a mindset shift or an action, what would you leave them with to kind of ground everything we've talked about into their reality this week?
Well, something that I say, I'll tell you two things that I say often to myself and also to my clients. One is that self trust is my main strategy. I believe this in business. I believe this in life. I think it's so important to strive to be an individual who deeply trusts themselves and has a relationship with yourself and also, with the great beyond, with creator, with God. But like self trust will get you so far in being able to actually just execute and make decisions and take the brave steps and do what needs to be done in order to get where you're trying to go in life. The other thing, when it comes more to personal brand and some of those things that we talked about, I often say polarize to magnetize. And I think this is one of the biggest reasons why more people are not getting the visibility or the response or the audience that they're hoping for is because they're still trying to be liked by everybody. And a magnet is only magnetic because it has the polar opposite ends. And so understanding that if you want to be so magnetic that people are going to flock to you and immediately hit follow and be like, I align with this person. I love what you're talking about. I'm with you. I'm for you. I want to buy from you. Then you also have to be willing to create that experience of the repelling side where someone comes to your page or your website or whatever and they're like, oh, this is like so not me, not for me, don't like it, I'm leaving. That is part of that natural dichotomy that has to exist. And so to not be afraid to stand in the truth of what you believe, to be who you are absolutely fully, and to share your opinions clearly and loudly, because yes, there will be people that dislike you. Yes, there will be people that find you offensive or that want to judge you, but that is the only way that you're going to create people that are obsessed with your movement, that are bought into your mission, and that actually love what you're doing and creating in the world.
Oh, I agree wholeheartedly. It's a scary thing to lean into for a lot of people just starting sometimes. But many of us have heard the saying, if you're trying to speak to everyone, if you're trying to please everyone, you're actually speaking to no one. And it's a really beautiful way to blend in online and not stand out because nothing is sparking that. And I've even learned on Instagram, like we welcome the naysayers. They're engaging with you, and then other people are engaging with them and people are having a conversation. And so as long as it's something that you feel really convicted in and you're not just rage baiting,
Mhm.
then it can be fun. It can be really fun exposure therapy too, just to practice. Okay. Am I feeling threatened right now? Am I feeling scared? Can I breathe into this and just use it as your own like little life coach a little bit. So for listeners that are really interested in potentially working with you and are intrigued by what you've had to say, where's the best place for them to connect?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram at _Samantha Daily. You can check out the podcast anywhere that you get podcasts. We just had Melissa on the show. So if you want to listen to our episode over there, the show is called Makeshift Happen. You can find it on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, any of the places. And yeah, come say hi. Shoot me a DM if you found me from this conversation. I'd love to chat with you guys.